Welcome everyone to the Everything EOS Livestream. My name is Steph, and we've got a great show for you lined up today. We got great guests such as Yves, Zach, Nathan, Brandon, Denis. We got great people live with us in the chat right now. Shout out to everyone joining us in the chat. We appreciate it when you interact with the show. Drop us some questions, drop us some memes, drop us some reactions, share this video, and also, why not leave a like? Okay, so let's give it a couple seconds, let people roll in here to the show. Happy to be back after a month. This is actually the first time we're doing an Everything EOS monthly live stream 4 weeks after the previous show. So maybe it's going to be a bit shorter than the previous ones. We'll see how it turns out. All right, and if you're joining us live, of course, we love it when you chat with us in the chat. If you're watching on the replay, join us on Telegram to keep the conversation going. That's t.me/EOS_global. All right, so what do we have in store today? We're gonna start off with the EOS Ecosystem Spotlight, where I give updates to you guys about community updates. And then we're gonna go on to the Big Beard Banter, where we're talking Recover Plus on EVM, Leap 6, BTC Layer 2, and a bunch of tweets from Yves. And then some industry news, AI, DeFi, fake Toshi, who knows what we'll be talking there. And then throwing it over for a fireside chat with Denis, talking on RAM updates. Very hot topic in the community, of course, these days. And then last but not least, we got Nathan James coming in for the EOS Developer news. Leap 6 Savannah consensus algorithm, fuck yeah, Web IDE, new RAM actions on Jungle, and the Antelope firewall are some of the topics you'll be hearing later on in the show. And then, of course, the Dev Challenge with 1,000 EOS prize. All right, so let's dive into today's topics. Welcome to the Ecosystem Spotlight, where I read out updates from you guys and share it with the entire EOS community. So make sure you submit your updates, submit a short text that I'll read word for word, submit more context if you want me to be more educated about your project and give you the proper shout out you deserve. All right, so let's jump into today's Ecosystem Spotlights. Hey, happy Lunar New Year 2024. Wishing the EOS community a year of prosperity and strength in the year of the dragon. That's what's up. Shout out to the EOS Foundation China team for the great work they've been doing over the last couple of weeks and months, promoting the new Lunar New Year, ramping up those followers and that engagement on social media. Definitely like to see it. And make sure to follow EOS China to be notified of future updates. Here we go, and this is where you can do that at EOS Foundation CN on X. All right, next up, we've got Feed Your Monkey releases a farming update on EOS. Feed Your Monkey has released a farming update that introduces for the community to engage with, introducing peels and tree NFTs. Tree NFTs can be planted and then fertilized with peels to grow bananas. Feed Your Monkey is home to one of the most active GameFi communities on EOS, so you should check it out if you're not already there. Head to feedyourmonkey.today to get started. Awesome. Thanks for submitting this update for the community. Next up, we've got Antelope.io. Antelope X brings seamless bridging across the entire Antelope ecosystem. So Antelope X is an innovative service built on Antelope trustless IBC technology. The Antelope X service makes it easy to move tokens, and soon NFTs change seamlessly. Love to get updates from Antelope X. Of course, this product brought to you by the great team over at Boyd.com. These guys are OGs with the EOS community from the start. Love to see these guys continuing to release products for the Antelope ecosystem. speaking of, we'll be talking today about the Antelope Firewall. So at the core of Antelope Firewall are its advanced filter and rate limit systems. These allow node providers to sift through incoming traffic and identify requests that are likely to fail, thus preventing unnecessary load on the servers. By introspecting requests to be proxied, Antelope Firewall can block or granularly rate limit problematic IPs, authorizers, and even specific smart contracts, ensuring that potentially successful transactions are prioritized. So if you want to learn more, stay tuned. We'll be talking a bit more about it later on the show, but you can also check out the article shared in the chat. All right, talking about EOS EVM action, SFN support added to the EOS EVM bridge. SFNs are now transferable to EOS EVM. And if you're not familiar, SFNs are Shufan tokens, which has been an art creator in the EOS NFT ecosystem for many, many years. Love to see Shufan expanding to the EOS EVM and also inscriptions, and kind of leading the way here with her community into exploring all the ways that you can interact with the EOS ecosystem. So you can learn more about SFN, link shared in the chat below. Here, EOSnetwork.com is where you can bridge those tokens. So here we can see SFNS now enabled as one of these tokens you can bridge. There's all sorts of great tokens to move over back and forth between EOS Native, EOS EVM, USDT, and EOS. Of course, checks, absolute beast lately, Zeos, Box, Banana, all of these great tokens from great projects in the EOS ecosystem. And if you want to learn more, at EOS Inscriptions on X, where you can find out more information about these SFNS tokens, how you can earn some, and what you can do with them. All right, moving on to some new Paycash. 2 million EOS recovered for the Paycash community on the EOS EVM. So on February 22nd, the Recover Plus team successfully froze 2 million EOS of compromised funds on the EOS EVM and is already in the progress of a final recovery. The Paycash team expresses their deepest gratitude to the Recover Plus team for their continued support and expertise in ensuring the restoration of justice. This not only highlights the effectiveness of the Recover Plus initiative, but also shows how reliable and advanced the EOS ecosystem is. As a sign of appreciation and commitment to creating a more secure blockchain environment, the team is committed to donate 5% of all recovered funds to further support and develop the Recover Plus project. You can find out more in the links shared in the chat below. All right, there we go. That wraps up the EOS Ecosystem Spotlight section. Remember to submit your updates for next month's show. Simply follow the link below. Send them early, send them late, send us updates halfway through the month. It's all good. We love sharing the news with the community. All right, let's rolling. But before we do that, if you like that last segment, leave a like, leave a subscribe, and make sure to tune in next month when we do it all over again. All right, our next segment is one of my favorite segments of the show, the Big Beard Banter, where we get to hang out with Yves and Zach as they talk about the latest and greatest topics of the EOS ecosystem. Let's bring on the guys to the show.
You missed the Big Beard cue.
Hey,
no one's gonna understand the joke now. When we were prepping right before the show,
no, he did say it. He started. No, actually, he did say it. You missed it.
You missed it, Zach.
I
We delivered
missed
flawlessly. We performed this perfectly. Oh, the Big Bird stumble. Yves coming in with the big.
It was a real stumble. We just recreated it on the live stream because we really did it right
all
before
good, all
starting
good.
it.
Nice to have you guys join the show once again. Only been a month this time since we last talked, which is good. get some more consistent
some
updates.
Hot topics, though. Some hot topics that people have been waiting for this one to hear more about. So just as a heads up, we're going to break this segment into two as we have been. So we're going to do this segment and we'll come back at the very end. We'll save the juiciest one for the very end. But so this segment, we'll talk about the Leap 6 upgrade. We put a date out. We'll continue on about the Recover Plus news, which you described, but we'll give some backstory into that. And then we'll give some updates on the BTCL2. Later on, we're going to jump into some discussion around the RAM upgrades, which will be coming after Denis gives a fireside chat describing what those upgrades are. And then we'll get into the most recent conversation topics of new token economic. I don't even want to call it a proposal, but we'll get into some of the tweets that Yves made last weekend in the second segment. So ready to kick this off?
Lots of juicy topics. I'll step back, leave you guys at it, but I'll be back in a bit. Have fun, guys.
All right. So since it was part of the news and you already kind of introduced it, Recover Plus. So 2 million EOS was recovered. And this is an exploit. This is a DeFi exploit that happened, what was it, last June, last May?
Took a while.
And it was right after the EVM launched. So Recover Plus was one of the very early initiatives of the ENF with the blue paper group we created, and then the work, obviously the working group, and then the work they did. They did one action. What was the project? I can't remember the project's name. Where the action happened with Recover Plus on EOS on native. Panda rings.
Oh, the one that actually occurred elsewhere.
Yes,
it was a hack elsewhere, but that application had funds on EOS. Yes, correct. Yes.
So let's start from the top. You want to give a high-level introduction of like what Recover Plus is in case people are tuning in who just have no idea what this even is?
Yeah, I mean, Recover Plus is, I guess, the fruit of an idea that began with functionalities that exist on EOS. And so on EOS, inherently, because of the permission sets, you have functionalities that are available or that are possible. And it was this idea that should something occur, like a hack, or that there's an error in the code, and that it be recognized that there's an issue there and it wasn't the intent of, EOS can actually step in. It could do something, or there was the possibility of it doing something. And that was obviously a very touchy subject because it's blockchain, immutability and such. You're not changing what happened in the past, you're just changing state going forward. And this really all started because there was a hack years ago, which then the block producers determined that they were willing to intervene, and they did return all funds. All funds were recovered. But after that initially occurred, there started to have more serious discussions on how to, in a way, democratize or open that up to anybody and everybody with an open framework, like an open program, so to speak, like it so that it were to be, so that it could become an initiative, so that should this be a possibility again in the future, that there's some guidelines around it and that people know about it beforehand, because it's a feature that was possible. And so that's how Recover Plus was born. And fast forward, Recover Plus mechanism and framework has evolved over that period of time, and it's gotten better and such. And this is basically the latest iteration of it, where when this hack occurred, one of the reasons why Recover Plus couldn't be used at the onsets on the day of or the day after, and this general idea of being able to intervene, the funds were transferred over or were moved over on the EVM side. And EVM, when it was built, didn't have that Recover Plus functionality. And so it was kind of a loophole that the hacker found of, well, okay, I'm just going to put it here, and now you won't be able to engage. And so those discussions obviously were occurring in the background of, okay, well, what could we potentially do in order to broaden that a reach of Recover Plus initiative to include EVM? And over the last year or so, updates occurred. That talk was still happening in the background. Obviously, this could not occur in the foreground, because if you let people know that you're working on a potential remediation solution to this, and the hacker or hackers are paying attention, they would now exit the ecosystem. But basically the funds were stuck there. They weren't really going out, in part because of liquidity, not enough liquidity and such. But the BPs and Recover Plus were working in the background of, okay, what could we do? And so, this was a coordinated effort leading to, like you said, I think it was February 22nd, so a week ago or so, the execution of basically almost a year's worth of work in the background to come and recover this. And obviously with hacks becoming more complex in the future, what we saw with this, same thing as what we call the spider hack before that, is the creation of a ridiculous amounts of accounts. And so now you've got like MSIGs of MSIGs of MSIGs and thousands of MSIGs, and the technical complexities of being able to do this and making sure everything was legit and testing this, but testing it obviously in public, but not trying to attract attention and coordinating all this. This is like a year's worth of work in the background to be able to get here.
When the hack first happened, the Paycash team was coming into the chats. They were begging, please build this functionality into the EVM. And there wasn't even communication with the Paycash team while this was happening, because yes,
we found out before they found out, when the hacker actually occurred at that time. Yeah.
Well, I mean, after everyone knew about it, they reached out in the public chats, and they were asking, like, could we extend Recover Plus to the EVM? At the time, it didn't have the technical capabilities. It's something that was kind of on our radar, but this was something that there's an instant use case. Like, it'd be great to have Recover Plus in EVM anyway, regardless of if there were lost funds sitting there just waiting to be recovered. So just the way it worked out, in parallel, our engineering team built the functionality without even having Recover Plus in mind necessarily, because they needed the functionality to be able to upgrade certain contracts. So when this Recover happened, whenever this feature is implemented very recently, this is the only EVM on the market that has this Recover functionality. And I think it's very innovative. We've seen multiple instances. Last year alone, you mentioned in a tweet, when the Recover happened,
1.3 billion or 2.1 billion. Yeah.
$1.3 billion lost in hacks and exploits, in mostly in DeFi projects alone. That's just in 2023. Most DeFi is on EVM-based projects. This is a feature. Like a lot of times with blockchain, it's like you're a hammer looking for a nail. This is a clear problem. There's a problem with security exploits and bugs in smart contracts. Nothing's perfect, and Recover Plus isn't perfect either. It can't solve every problem, but it is kind of like a last-ditch insurance effort policy that can be used, and we showcase that it could be used. And I hope other
this is
blockchains...
the third or fourth time that EOS recovers funds,
but the first on EVM.
Millions of dollars. Yeah, that would have otherwise been lost, and that it was completely recognized. I mean, the first one, the hacker actually apologized and published the private keys in order for that to occur, but then that framework around it afterwards, I think this is the third time.
And this is super innovative, because it's not just hackers that this is valuable for. If you go back to 2017, do you remember the Parity wallet bug? So they updated their GitHub. They updated something in their code that actually locked them out of their own wallet. And I have the news in front of me. It's $280 million worth of Ether at the time in 2017. So that means it's multiple billions of dollars right now. If a situation like that occurred at that time in 2017, it was like within 2 years of the DAO hard fork of Ethereum, and there was a lot of controversy. Like, why did you do a hard fork for the DAO hack, but you won't do a hard fork for Parity? And Parity became Polkadot basically later on. So it was a big controversy at the time. Those tokens are still frozen to this day. If that were to occur on EOS EVM, and it'd be great if there's $280 million of value there. But if such a situation were to occur, and if they were able to get the support of the block producers and prove that it was an innocent mistake, and they can validate that it's their token, mistakes or hacks do not have to happen. I hope other blockchains take notice. I know ERC20 tokens, have them be recovered. So this isn't necessarily a new concept, but as far as I'm aware, EOS is the only one doing it in production. So is there anything else on Recover Plus? We have a lot of topics to go through today.
Just a huge shout out to Francis from Recover Plus, who's been leading this and doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Denis from EOS Nation as well, who's been helping out with that. At the end of the day, I guess the block producers have a vote to make in terms of yay or nay support. But the people actually have to do the work in the background, and the amount of work and the technical skill set required to be able to do this is very significant. It's quite it requires a lot of experience. It requires understanding the code very, very well. Requires understanding smart contracts very well, understanding resources. I mean, there's some bugs, there's some glitches even in.
We just lost the big beard. Ooh. Well, I guess I'll just jump into the next topic. I could give the Leap update. So, Leap 6. So we've been talking about Leap 6 for a very long. Well, not so much Leap 6. We've been talking about instant finality for a very long time now. So if you guys recall, instant finality was initially meant to be in the Leap 5 upgrade. But after and EOS Network built a lot of the groundwork for it. But then whenever the handoff happened, and Yves about to come back in here, I'll pull him. Come on.
I was just talking about crash and bug, and Chrome crashed and kicked me out.
So I just went right into the Leap 6 upgrade. So in the instant finality update, we can call it, and now we're calling it the Savannah Consensus.
Savannah, that's right.
So instant finality, we gave a name to it, Savannah. It is an acronym. I still have to memorize the acronym, but we'll never actually use the acronym. But our engineers really wanted to be fancy with it. Scalable agreement on validated additions with nimble, non-repudiating attestation. But for everyone else, it is Savannah. So instant finality, you can now refer to as Savannah Consensus. If you're doing a comparison to other blockchains, you can think of like the Atoms blockchain. So you have the Cosmos SDK, that's like Antelope. And then the Tendermint, if you think of Tendermint Consensus, that's what Savannah is for EOS. So we put the dates out. So it's been a long time because there was a delay. We wanted to put this into Leap 5. I had a really hard time explaining what happened with Leap 5. So could you explain the handoff and then how the ENF engineers kind of had to step in to re-architect a lot of the work?
I mean, long story short, basically you can develop the code, but then you need to merge it into the code base. And when you're designing something and then once you go to implement it, you start thinking of how it will behave once it's out in the wild in relation to how it's being merged and what the edge cases could be. And there were edge cases that were found, which basically put us in a situation of having to make a decision to delay or to accept the greatest of risks, which would have been a double spend or shutting off the chain, basically. And so the easy, the only choice that could have been made really was to delay the deployment of it within Leap 5.0 and to redesign some parts of the architecture to ensure that that would not be the case, that those security risks, which were quite high, the highest level of impact, but the likelihood of them occurring were relatively high, between low and medium. But we could foresee that this was just a question of time until that would have occurred. And so that's what created the delays. But that also then opened the door to even perfect that even further in light of other projects that are currently being worked on, and or other ideas that came about. And so we typically work on a twice a year release schedule, or we made, this is what we were working towards. We had said that typically in the spring we would do a non-contentious upgrade. Why I'm saying non-contentious is because it's not a hard fork, but some hard forks are actually non-breaking changes. So anyways, just that's more lingo. But spring, update at your own pace, and fall, hard fork type of thing where everybody needs to update. Obviously, with this, we're veering off of track. Leap 5.0 came a little bit later. Because of that, we wanted to release some features, but not this one. And now we're trying to accelerate this one so that we don't have to wait till fall again. So the dates that are being proposed, and obviously these are very aggressive timelines. It's the end of July. So July 31st is when we would want to have it activated on the mainnet. Which means that it's being tested well before that. It's ready well before that. We're still on track very much for that. And then we did release a plan as well, or we do have a plan so that if we don't meet that July date, then it's basically the last Wednesday of the following month. And so our confidence level to release, to deploy and to have it activated at the end of July is quite high. If we can't meet that target, then it would be the equivalent date, but at the end of August. I believe that's August 28th, just going off of memory. And then obviously that confidence level increases significantly. And worst case scenario, it would be the equivalent, but at the end of September. But we are on track and working towards that July 31st. We're essentially trying to output this as quickly as possible within those security parameters and making sure that when we do activate this, that it's quite that it's safe, basically.
Yep. So communications the initial communications, think of it like a save the date for a wedding. They have gone out to every centralized exchange running EOS nodes, whether they're block proofs or not. The other date is
there's huge coordination around this, right? This is an update where everybody needs to upgrade.
We're targeting a testnet launch date of April 24th. So anyone that wants to play around with it, see how it works, April 24th, you'll be able to hopefully play around on Jungle testnet. The other piece, so I was going to save your tweets from over the weekend to the second segment, but there's one segment that is kind of relevant to that, and that is that the ENF is investigating the business source license for Leap 6. So whenever we say only possible on EOS, Leap 6 and Savannah are very likely to only be possible on EOS unless other blockchains want to get access to the license, I guess. So if you're not familiar with what a business source license is, just look into Uniswap. So whenever Uniswap first launched, they're obviously one of the first AMMs, very successful. But then what happened was they were essentially getting vampire attacked from mainly SushiSwap, which took a lot of their market share away. And then when Uni V2 launched, it launched with what's called a business source license. So it's still technically open source. Everyone could access the code. Everyone could read the code. But if you want to use that code in a production environment,
you can use it production. You can't use it in a commercial environment. I think that's maybe a slight distinction.
Okay.
So you could, for example, a testnet is a production environment. It's a testnet. I mean, maybe the terms are slightly off. But yes, the idea is that you would not be able to use it in a commercial or commercialize that product or the software unless you got permission to do so.
Yeah, and the reason this came about was, so the ENF, like outside of the Antelope Coalition and everything like that, the ENF has been putting toward like the majority of the development, the funding, the millions of dollars for OCI, which is a third-party contractor to develop this. And even with Instant Finality itself, to actually merge Instant Finality to create what is now called Leap 6 and Savannah, probably at least another $1 million of
more than that, yeah,
additional development costs. And whenever this kind of first came up with the coalition, Yves extended the offer of, can anyone chip in and support us in doing this? As far as no support, right? As far financial support.
Unfortunately, no, yeah.
So essentially, every Leap 5 will most likely be the last Antelope Leap release that is under the MIT license, and then everything that UX created and handed off to the coalition, still MIT license, open source. But then all of the work that's been done since then, as far as the merging and creating Leap 6, highly likely, no final decisions have been made, but really investigating the business source license to protect that, I guess, IP. And what that means is it'll still be accessible, still be available as far as accessing it, but in what did you call it? A commercial environment would require a consent from the authors, which is the ENF, and then there would be a time restriction on it. So that hasn't been determined yet. So, for example, Uniswap, for Uniswap V2, they put a 1-year timeline on it, and then after 1 year, it went to an open source license. With Uni V3, more recently, or V4, I can't even remember all the versions of this.
Yeah, it's the opposite. Yes, V4 I think is on a 4-year license.
They put a 4-year license. And that's what we're
exploring. So we will bring that up to the VPs tonight. So there is a VP call tonight, Eastern Standard Time tonight. But yes, this idea of from Leap 6.0 on, it being under a business source license, essentially protecting that intellectual property to the EOS network. now everything backwards. Obviously, that is not the case. Leap 5.0 is incredibly performant, incredibly strong. It's very stable, but basically, kind of the secret sauce or anything that's worth protecting going forward, and all future releases would be under that business source license. Is the idea? It is the proposal. So it will be discussed with the block producers and gather some feedback. We did. So I did put that in the tweet last week, and we did get some people provide feedback. We've got some discussion going on in the community. It is not a fait accompli. It's not done. But it is something that we are considering because of the amount of time and resources put in to this particular piece, which basically we, as the ENF and you as the EOS token holders, essentially paid for. And so that's the idea. And I believe we're being asked to now get out of this. We get the Oscar prompt on screen.
So we got the last topic is updates on BTCL2. So you've been leading a lot of the groundwork on the white paper. So just, I guess, give the TLDR on what's going on with that. What can people expect next? Maybe mention the conferences you'll be at next month.
Sure. Yeah. So the idea basically just started because people started discussing this idea of BTCL2. You can look at obviously within the market right now, and even I was on a call with a VC on Monday, and the VC said out of the last 30 calls they had, 29 of them were BTCL2. So you can clearly see that there's momentum and a narrative being built around that right now because of the BTC ETF approvals, Bitcoin ETF approvals, and such. And we're seemingly in a bull market, or at the beginnings of a bull market, if anything. Bitcoin earlier today almost touched its all-time high, then severely dropped right afterwards, but it got very, very close. And so there's this kind of narrative building of there's going to be an influx of new people coming in. People typically come in through the Bitcoin doors and such. And so a bunch of different chains and teams are working at their basically solutions to be able to bridge to the Bitcoin, or to be able to expand Bitcoin. So those chats started occurring in the channels, and they got so real, and there was so much momentum around it that obviously, as with anything else that we've done at the ENF, we always.
I just bounced again. I can't even fill in the gaps here because I haven't been doing the groundwork on that. What I can mention is there's several. He's coming back. There's several BTCL2 conferences. Yves will be in Hong Kong in April. I was just jumping in with the one thing I know, and that's the conferences. Sorry.
So the community is talking about this, and the community is, what would this look like? Well, somebody needs to actually start doing work around this. So there was obviously labs started dedicating resources towards thinking about this. We at the ENF also started looking towards this. Me personally, I'm like, all right, there's a skill set that I have. Let me start put pen to paper. What could this look like? So we started doing a bunch of research on other chains, what they are doing, other solutions out there, what are the different approaches. If we were to do something, what would be our approach? And just start basically brain dumping ideas on a piece of a blank Google Doc. And that just started taking more and more form, where, okay, if this is going to be serious, it needs to take the shape of a white paper. There was a SEALs team that was created. Basically, people who were interested in this subject, especially at the VP level, started raising their hand. Hey, I'd like to either contribute to this, or at least be aware of what's going on, and I'll provide some feedback if I can. And so that's been occurring over the last, give or take, a month and a half or so ago. And I just took the lead on drafting a white paper. It's much easier for people to tear down something than it is to give them a white piece of paper and then to expect them to draft stuff and to put ideas together. And so I just started brain dumping a bunch of stuff. It just morphed and morphed and morphed. The white paper at this point is 72 pages long, which is way too heavy, way too long. And so now we're in the process of starting to trim stuff, trying to remove stuff from that so that it's more condensed and it's more to the point. Obviously now, this has been made public that we're working on this, so people are pitching their ideas, and we're looking at what's going on in the community, and we're integrating some of that in there. Nothing's been determined. All of this is still in draft, but then we also started thinking of a process of how can we get the community involved in this. So there's going to be the white paper going to be released as a draft. We have a framework around who will be able to, or how you'll be able to contribute, and incentivization mechanisms around being able to encourage people to contribute, even in the sense of being an acknowledgement or contributor, a co-author, author type of thing. And so this idea just really started off in the community, and people have just been raising their hand and volunteering to do work around this. And this is where we're at now. I can say that we are pretty close to being able to release that first draft. Keep in mind that it is a draft, and so there are parameters in there right now. But as we gather more feedback and as we get more people participating in this, those parameters may change, may evolve. Some sections may be removed, some sections may be added. And so, it's still going to be a work in progress, but I would say we're a week to 2 weeks away from being able to release it publicly, where people will be able to start commenting, talking about it more and such. And so it's kind of this idea of ideation out in the public well before there's anything set. We still have some significant components to determine in terms of the technology side of things, so the trustless side of things, what that entails and what that could look like. We're still very, very early in the overall process, but basically EOS is also working on a solution for that, to be able to participate in there. And to that effect, I will be heading out to Hong Kong. I'm speaking on a panel. I believe I'm going to have a keynote early on in April in Hong Kong at a BTC L2 conference. Where it's only going to be about BTC L2s. And so we're going to be going there, trying to court VCs as well, trying to pitch this. So by the time we actually go there, then that for sure will have to be released, the draft. So that's why I'm saying 1 to 2 weeks, give or take, because we're working against that timeline of April. Pitch decks, this will have a token. What does that look like? Where does that token live? What are the tokenomics? What are the token allocations? What happens to the EOS holders? Are they in there somehow? Basically, all of this is in the white paper right now in draft form. And that will be released for people to start commenting and basically tearing apart. But it's easier to tear apart something when there's something to tear apart.
So just to recap, the process will be we share the draft publicly within, I guess, the EOS community, feedback, comments, change parameters, add things, remove things from that public feedback. And then at a certain point, enough is enough. Stop we basically say this is the final version, and then we publish it, do the PR push. That's whenever we really start pushing it externally. The conferences will be coming up. You'll be doing the keynotes early April. So you'll be doing a roundtable speech at Spring Summit on April 5th. And then on April 8th is the BTCL2 conference in parallel. And you'll be doing the keynote and I believe a panel at the BTCL2 conference. And then I also believe the plans are to attend Web3 Carnival and Web3 Festival, which are all kind of going on in parallel. There's just a lot of blockchain events going on that week in Hong Kong. And Yves will be there. I believe Tony and Wachang are planning to be there. Some other people from EOS Labs, Beatrice from the ENF. So there will be a whole lot of familiar faces there. So if anyone is in China, Hong Kong, the Asia area, and you're going to be in Hong Kong for that week, shoot us a message, shoot a DM, put a message in one of the public chats, tag one of us, get our attention, or just show up and say hello. Mm-hmm. I think that's our topics, and we'll get into the really, really juicy ones when we come back.
All right, that was great. Great topics, guys. Looking forward to hearing more about it. I got a couple questions. I will keep them for later, though, but wanted to just give a quick recap. 2 million EOS, always great to hear. I'm happy for those token holders. I know how it feels to lose tokens for whatever reasons, so that feels great when you get them back. What I was also, what I enjoyed hearing is the 5% fee that goes back to Recover Plus, which I wasn't aware of. So that's nice that, well, first of all, usually it's 10% fee to recover funds. So right there, that's 5%. It's half as expensive than usual. And then that 5% doesn't go to the attacker. It goes to the defenders of Recover Plus for future hacks. So
you're talking about like ransoms whenever the hacker gives the fund back.
Yeah, well, whatever. Ransom or suddenly white hat hackers who want 10%, for their bug fee, whatever it is.
They were black 2 seconds ago, and now because they got caught, they suddenly become white. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. But so that was cool to hear. Savannah, great name. Definitely awesome acronym. I need a. Do you guys know it? I need a reminder. I need a reminder on it already.
So just as a heads up, the acronym will likely be the name of the academic paper that'll be published, like in academic, like I'm not sure what journal it'll be in yet, but it'll be called Scalable Agreement on Validated Additions with Nimble Non-Repudiating Attestation. Thank you, Areg, Director of Engineering at the ENF, for coming up with that name and acronym.
Yeah,
there it is.
Oh, there it is.
And there's a reason for every single word in there. So when I first heard that, obviously it's a mouthful. We will not be talking about. We will not be.
Yeah, we'll call it Savannah.
Wording out it's Savannah. But for those who are interested, each word has a very specific meaning for that. Obviously, you come up with the name first, and then you define the acronym afterwards. So Savannah, Leap, Antelope, right? So it's all in the same vein of ideas. But each word in that acronym has a very specific meaning. It's not just made up. So it is pretty cool if people are interested.
Scalable agreement on validated additions with nimble non-repudiating attestation. Boom, first try.
No one will ever be quizzed on it. Like, as far as we're talking publicly, we'll just call it Savannah. But in the background, there is a lot of meaning, I guess, behind that name.
Cool. And then, of course, BTC L2. Obviously, that narrative is very strong across the entire crypto space. I think it's great, of course, that EOS is in there. And what is very interesting, it's very involved with the community. You know, that backstory about how it kind of came about was very interesting. And it's great seeing the community and the ENF and labs collaborating closely together at the forefront of innovation and kind of staying on beat with everything that's going on, which is very different from our experience in EOS in the early years, where the community had no interaction with its kind of leaders. So that's very cool to see. All right, enough of my comments. Enough of you guys for now. You guys will be back later. See you soon. All right, shout out to everyone in the chat. We're breaking over 50 people in the live stream. Love that you guys are jumping in. Who do we have in the chat? Nova Crypto. We've got the Beat Trust. Zafir, our Pomelo contest winner from last month. I hope you're hooked up now with the email. Who else do we have here? We've got Nova Crypto, like EOS, Danny, Jeremy, all sorts of people. Love seeing you guys in the chat. And leave those questions. If you had questions for Yves or Zach about these topics, they'll be coming back later, and they'll have a chance to answer those questions as well. Okay, so moving on to our next hot topic, RAMs, and everything going on with the RAM ecosystem within EOS. So it's time to go hang out with Brandon and Denis a bit and hear all about RAM.
All right, welcome back to another Fireside Chat. Today I'm joined by a true OG of the EOS space, Denis Carrière, co-founder of EOS Nation, CTO of Pinax. He's also worked really hard to bring us Pomelo, doing a lot of the smart contract wizardry there. You're a man of many hats, like a small handful of people in the space. So really glad to have you here today. How you doing?
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for having me. And like I said, I've been in the space for over 5 years, mostly in EOS at the beginning. And we adventured in different projects. And now we're kind of pushing the blockchain history solutions with Pinax. Also diving into smart contract development and system contract upgrades. Happy to be contributing back to the EOS community.
Today, we're going to talk a little bit about RAM. It's been a big topic lately. Maybe you could explain to us a little bit about the history on RAM, why RAM is kind of unique on EOS, and how we got here, what led us to this point.
So EOS launched initially with about 64 gigs of RAM. RAM is essentially like the storage unit on EOS. So if you build a smart contract, if you're storing a token balance, you need RAM to store the rows to create your token balance or whatnot for your smart contract. So RAM is kind of that utility for smart contract developers. The pricing of RAM is whenever someone purchases RAM, it uses the Bancor algorithm to determine the price. So if more people purchase it, the price increases, and then as people sell, the price decreases. When the chain launched, people were purchasing a lot of RAM because they kind of saw that utility, that value proposition. So the price of RAM increased a lot to eventually make account creation and doing airdrops very expensive. So there was a proposal to sort of decrease or kind of cool off the RAM market by issuing additional RAM supply to the market at a rate of 1 kilobyte per block, which is equivalent to about 63 gigs of RAM per year. It essentially doubled the supply of RAM year by year. And we were on the 5th year of this 63 gig increase. And that essentially just suppresses the price of RAM because there's an additional supply going into circulation. But this was essentially like left untouched for a very long time. And as all decentralized network, we have to kind of come to consensus and see, well, does it still make sense, to have this sort of increase or this supply increase over year by year? So that's a little bit of the history. And now we're today.
You were the author of the recent proposal to set the RAM increase rate to 0, which was then approved or ratified, voted on by 17 of the 21 active BPs on December 17th of last year. Now, what led to you making that proposal, and what went into that exactly?
Eventually, what happens is we're going to hit physical, actual hardware limits on the block producer side. Setting up nodes will then essentially get exponentially more expensive because of the RAM requirements. And because it's been 5 years that we've been increasing at a 63 gigs per year per rate, the machines that you need to sort of provision are getting more and more expensive if that RAM is used up. Now, on EOS, that RAM was not used up entirely, but we know that, the more people use smart contracts and the more they lock up RAM, it will eventually force the block producers, the peer-to-peer nodes, all the infrastructure to actually increase the RAM capacity. And that's essentially every machine in your entire stack, your peer-to-peer, your API, your block producer. And some block producers might have above 10 nodes running just for one chain. So it does get really expensive. So the reason for the stoppage is purely just for reducing the maximum pain on the infrastructure requirements to run EOS. Same thing with Bitcoin. Bitcoin's trying to reduce the block size to make it allowable for people to run Bitcoin on a reasonable machine. Like you can still run Bitcoin on your laptop, but you cannot run EOS on your laptop unless you have a really, really good laptop. So it was mostly just for that. And right now we're kind of seeing that we've stopped at about 409 gigs of RAM. But that does not mean that all the 409 gigs are, in use. That's essentially the maximum reserved capacity. But as RAM, increases in price, it's getting more and more expensive to purchase that RAM. And now there is essentially no more inflation, which means that the price of RAM essentially stays static according to the system contract. Now it's just purely based on free market, right? So right now it's the free market is determining the price of RAM, not the system contract cooling itself off, right? That was before.
There's been a pretty healthy amount of speculation on the price. We've seen a considerable amount of EOS being locked up in RAM. So it's increased TVL and EOS.
And the fees too, the system contract fees that are
right,
all being fueled to go to Rex, which then increases your APY for staking. So it's definitely generating a lot of system contract revenue and interaction. It's putting the flame under EOS. People are now excited.
So I understand that there's another set of proposals to further enhance RAM. Maybe you could go through these and explain what they are.
Transferring RAM. So allowing RAM to be transferred between accounts at no fee, no cost. This allows for kind of two new mechanics. It allows to create an EOS account with existing RAM. So for account creation, that will help them kind of stabilize the prices or at least make them consistent. And then also the other sort of use case is the sort of RAM token wrappers. Maybe you want to wrap it as an NFT. Maybe you want to wrap it as an ERC20 token. And then there's some more utility things like where we included the RAM burn. This is maybe there's going to be some mechanics and some games that want to say hey, if you burn your RAM, we'll give you a token. Right now there's an MSIG being proposed on Jungle. So that should be pushed pretty soon.
I know Nathan James is working on Rams Valley or something.
Yeah. So Nathan James put a pretty good starting package as a GitHub repo that you can clone, you can fork it, you can then modify whatever you want within it. Currently, I think there's a base smart contract that kind of comes with it. But of course, you can change the contract to kind of make your own mechanics. But it's a starter package for anybody to build RAM-based applications. And it's to get people kind of motivated to build RAM-based applications that have RNG, it has prizes or lotteries or random things happening.
Could you say a little bit about just the EOS EVM and its RAM needs, I guess, going forward, or what you see for that?
Yeah, well, I see EOS EVM needing RAM for all of these smart contracts that are being deployed on EOS EVM. Yeah,
it was super cool when that wave of inscriptions happened to see just how well the network was able to handle it and not really break a sweat too much. Very promising, and especially considering there are additional tweaks that can be made. When we're talking about RAM, both real-world assets come up a lot, and DPIN, their decentralized physical infrastructure network. Would you care to weigh in on this conversation, where you see RAM or EOS falling in this DPIN RWA world?
I'm not an entire expert on the DPIN infra because it's a pretty new terminology, but I would say that EOS has been DPIN since day one, right? So we never knew about it because we never labeled it as sort of a DPIN infrastructure. It is a real world asset. When you are purchasing RAM on the market, you are reserving RAM in various machines. The terminology of DPIN is wide. It depends on who you ask. But for the RAM, EOS is definitely a DPIN.
What do you most want to see, or what are you going to build yourself, I guess?
I want to see proof of work RAM, a way that you can essentially mine proof of work RAM tokens, let's call them. And you literally need to compute hashes and lock up RAM. So lock RAM and do proof of work calculations, earn a prize.
Well, Denis, thank you so much. This has been very insightful. It's cool to see us being able to leverage some of these things, and I'm excited to see where it goes next.
For sure. Definitely exciting. And I'm looking forward to seeing all the different things that people build on top of this.
All right. Welcome back. Thank you, Brandon and Denis, for a great interview. Always love listening to Denis talk about EOS topics, and make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel so you can see the full interview when it's released soon. All right, so now we'll be heading over to our developer segment soon, but first we're going to bring back Yves and Zach for some light industry chit chat before going deeper into EOS topics.
Yo, what's in the news?
What up, guys? How's it going? Here's the industry segment where I talk about stuff that I'm interested in and see what you guys think about these topics. So, lined up today, I've got AI news, of course. That's got to be top of mind for most people these days. And so let's jump into that. And out there in the live chat, get your zeros, get your ones ready. We got questions coming for you guys. So biggest AI news recently in the last month, I think, is the Google Gemini disaster. So let's see what you guys think. In the chat, put a 0 if you think the Google Gemini release was a disaster, or put a 1 if you think it was bad, but not that bad. So there's no other option than either disaster or bad, but not that bad. Let's see what you guys think, 0 or 1. Zach, Yves, do you guys hear about this? Or do you not?
I guess my answer is, what's Gemini? And that answers your 0 or 1.
There you go. So Gemini is kind of the ChatGPT equivalent for Google. It's their AI chatbot. And they recently released an update or image generation capabilities. And basically, it was an incredibly woke chatbot. And it was basically unable to generate white people or historical figures accurately. And it was just an all-around disaster, in my opinion.
What's Gemini?
So it's like ChatGPT for Google. So there you go. So
I
then
think
it
you're
was
missing
terrible.
my point.
They pulled it. They pulled it back.
Hey, you're missing my point.
If we're going to talk about AI, the coolest AI news recently was the OpenAI releasing their video generation, their text-based video generation tool. That's innovative, but like obviously none of us have been able to play with it yet. But is this from I don't remember the name of it, but is this generated from OpenAI?
Sora, I think. And yeah, pretty sure it is. Absolutely epic video generation capabilities. I don't know. I don't think it's public yet, but this is really, really cool. Basically, my first reaction is I can't trust anything I see online anymore. It was already very suspicious of any, but at this point, it's incredibly, incredibly realistic. And then my second thought is hopefully blockchain can come in and solve some of these authentication problems that we're going to have with basically all of the media that we're going to be consuming online.
Yeah, these tools, like just the image generation tools, just like the memes you see, like anytime, like the RAM memes are freaking awesome within the EOS community, and they're all generated through ChatGPT or the other similar tools. So it's a lot of, I think the people who do stock images and stock video are going to be impacted the worst. There's no reason to really pay for that stuff anymore when you could just give a text prompt to ChatGPT and come up with equally good work. And soon that's going to be extended to video. We use ChatGPT now to do like some of the base work for like blog cover images within the blog, messages on socials, and you could sometimes finesse it a little bit further. So with like images, you generate the image, then you do some photoshopping on top of it. I don't know how that'll work for video. I think for the tools that I have available to me, there's a lot of limitations on them. Like if you wanted to do like a cartoon character, if you wanted consistency of that character across multiple prompts, it's very difficult. I'm sure the OpenAI team and maybe their commercial licenses that they're using, maybe you could have more control over that. But I do think there's like a lot of limitations. Like if you wanted to do like this character, so let's say you name this guy Fluffy and you want to do a cartoon series with Fluffy. Every time you prompt ChatGPT to make Fluffy blow out a candle or make Fluffy run in front of a car, Fluffy's gonna look different every time you generate his image. So I think like there are limitations to it, but you could see like the future already. Like there's gonna be.
But you could also start. You generate Fluffy, and then you can go to an artist and say, "Look, here's Fluffy. Here's what I want Fluffy to look like. Now create me a series with Fluffy." But your caveat to start off the thing has lowered the barrier for people to.
For sure, yes. Or if you're just wanting. You don't know what you want, and I've seen on with ChatGPT prompts drawing UIs for websites. You draw a UI on a napkin for a website or a web app, and then you give it to ChatGPT, and it generates the AI and the code for you. Like it's gonna definitely take away certain work, but it's also making everyone more efficient. It's just gonna create new work. It's just like the Industrial Revolution. Like a lot of people lost jobs, but then they just got different jobs. So I don't think this is a new topic or anything. I think it's just happening really fast. Like within the last 2 years, the acceleration of AI has just been absolutely insanely fast.
Yeah, and I think it leads to blockchain, in my opinion, for authentication and certification.
Yeah,
the way I see it is like every creator, company, whatever, has its public account, and there's a hash or there's some way to prove that whatever video you see online, you can go check the creator's account to confirm, yeah, that's officially his video and it's identical and there's no modifications or whatever.
Well, there's a lot of controversy over the training data that trained all of these AIs. There's a lot of copyright and IP that was used to train the models. So if they're to put a process or a framework in place of how do you credit the original training data and training models.
What I'm still most excited about is a personal AI that I can run on my own computer that will kind of just act as, AI interface for all of my data, all of my things. I think we're getting pretty close. It has to be open source model, and then and I think there will be a strong open source model that's gonna become really cool. And these models are gonna kind of become a commodity, and you won't be able to have a model that's much different than another model. The difference is the quality of the data that you put in that's gonna make all the difference. Eva,
what else we got in the news?
What else in the news? We got fake Toshi trial. Eve, another topic you may know nothing about.
No, I do. Fake Toshi. No, you still don't get it. What I'm saying is, what's Gemini's? Like, it was so uneventful. Nobody cares. Nobody knows it's already dead. What's Gemini?
It's already dead. Yeah. Well, yeah. So the other thing
it gives you my answer of 0 or 1. Like that's how. Yeah. There's nothing there. It's done.
What's mind blowing to me about that release is that how did no one say anything at Google. That how many thousands of people work there, and no one like said, guys, nothing's true in this AI, but why, like, nothing out of this is true. I don't know. That's mind blowing to me, and then it kind of destroys my confidence in all of Google. And then I've heard from a friend that that was like the last straw for him. Now he's taking 1 year to kind of disconnect his life entirely from Google. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. You know, are you de-Googling your life because of this? Let me know. Yeah, fake Toshi trial. Craig Wright claims to be Satoshi. No one believes him. He's in court right now. It's going terribly for him from what I've seen. So just wanted to give that quick update in case you weren't aware. Craig Wright getting wrecked in court right now. From what I can tell, there's a couple of people on X giving updates, and you know, just forgery after forgery, and then statements made in previous trials are now being contradicted, and it's an absolute disaster for him, which is great. Any thoughts on that, Zach?
I can't stand Craig Wright. I don't really care for him. I hope to see him in jail one day, but he's got so many lawsuits against him, owes so many people money. He's such a fraud, fake. He's not Satoshi. Like, even if he was Satoshi, it wouldn't even. If Craig Wright was proven to be Satoshi, it would not change my opinion of Craig Wright. It would just make me lose a ton of respect for Satoshi.
Right.
That's, right. I think, a good.
Let's make sure that
put it. Yes.
A lot of new communications with the Satoshi were released, though, in this trial, which is actually probably the most interesting thing.
Didn't that lead to people thinking it's even more halfany than not?
I heard it led people thinking to as a Canadian because of the way he typed color. But
gotcha.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Lots, 120 emails or something released. Unseen Satoshi content. Last topic here before we get back to EOS. Uniswap fee switch. I thought was very interesting for one reason, is that this is a US-based company that's now assigning revenue to a governance token. And so this is, from some people, feel that this is very ballsy from a US-based company to do this, assign revenue to their gov token, and with all the legal ramifications that may have, I have no idea, but we're probably going to find out over the next couple of years. And then some people were speculating that all these other gov tokens on DeFi may now be more likely to receive income, etc., which kind of sparked a little DeFi run in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, so I'm guessing that they did a lot of due diligence. I know they've got a large token allocation for like grants and funding for different things, and I know they fund a lot of like lobbyist groups and research groups. So I'm guessing that they did some due diligence on this, but we know the legal system and the gray areas. There's no framework for this within the US, so definitely a ballsy move, but they could always do the geopolitical arbitrage and just locate somewhere else if they need to, I guess. But yeah, it's nice to see though. But I'm wondering how the LPs feel, because the LPs are the ones losing revenue. So the liquidity providers were getting all of the liquidity revenue before. Now that revenue is getting split partially to Uniswap stakers who have no stake in the liquidity pool, but they got stake in the Uniswap network, which I do think makes sense to give them both some of the revenue. But I'm not familiar enough with the proposal in these changes. Maybe they're offsetting the losses of revenue with giving you more Uniswap tokens now instead. So instead of you getting swap revenue, you're just getting Uniswap, not inflation because the distribution's already done, but it's the equivalent of inflation basically to the LPs. But yeah, I think it's good. I think it's kind of how it works with a lot of other projects, like even like with DeFi on a much smaller scale, like DeFi Box, they use a portion of the revenue to basically buy back Box tokens. It's not redistributing the proceeds, but it's kind of doing the same thing by buying back tokens. So there's different ways to do it, and Uniswap's obviously has the biggest market share. So nice to see them going in this direction, but like you said, it's a huge risk, in my opinion, but I'm sure it's calculated on their side. I'm sure they did some due diligence and didn't just announce this willy-nilly. But I saw that candle. I had no clue. It's like you don't see a 50% pump within like minutes, hardly
I think
ever.
it went even at like 60-70%. It's I don't know what the peak was.
Yeah, it was like a god. It was like a Jesus candle.
It's at
It
the
held.
same time that EOS did a 14%, pretty much at the same time.
It held too. I mean, not all the way. It dipped a little bit, but yeah.
I mean, someone's got to take those risks, you know. So I'm happy
they've
that
got the money
Uniswap.
They've got the funds to back a legal. Like they've got so many tokens of their distribution. Like I've seen $1 billion grant. I forget what it was for, but they probably have a legal team on standby, funded with millions of dollars. So they're
in my opinion, this is kind of like a public good for crypto that Uniswap is doing, you know.
And if the SEC goes after them, I mean, sometimes someone's got to fight. You have to have a lot of funds, and you might get put into bankruptcy, but someone's
you might win. You might win
back.
against the SEC,
look at
as
Ripple.
many have done recently.
Look at Coinbase, look at Ripple, look at Grayscale and all the ETFs. Like someone's got to put their feet to the fire, and not everyone has the capital that a Uniswap has, for example, and with the VC backing that they have.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing how that plays out. Are we looking at DeFi Summer 2.0? We'll see. We'll find out. We'll find out. All right, we're gonna wrap up the industry segment here, and but you guys will be back later for the Unleashed Big Beard segment. But before that, we're gonna throw over to Nathan for some EOS development news.
Hello, hello. As always, good morning, good afternoon, or good night, wherever you are. If you're a dev, doesn't really matter anyway. We've got some interesting stuff to get into today, but before we do, make sure to join the Antelope Developers Chat if you're a dev at t.me/Antelope Devs. We hold a bi-weekly developer roundtable, which has had some excellent conversations recently, and if you're not there, you truly are missing out. I'm going to restate some things that you've seen before on the stream already because we cut these segments into smaller parts and use them to help promote EOS, which reminds me, don't forget to subscribe and like the stream to help the algorithm. Without further ado, let's dive in. Leap has a new name dropped for the consensus algorithm for Antelope, and it is Savannah. It is an acronym or a backronym that stands for a scalable agreement on validated additions with nimble, non-repudiating attestation. Excellent mouthful. We won't actually get into what that means. You might not understand what those words mean yet, but fret not. There is an academic paper coming out that will dive very deeply into depth. We have a timeline which is released for 6.0 as well now. Excuse me. July 10th is the target for the final release. July 11th to the 30th is the recommended upgrade period for all nodes, and July 31st is the hard fork date. Moving on to EVM, we have some new tokens added to the bridge. We have SFN art and SFN inscriptions. You can bridge them over at bridge.evm.eosnetwork.com, along with USDT, MLNK, checks, ZEOS, BRAM, SEOS, Box, USN, and of course, everyone's favorite, Banana. On tooling, there's a couple of different updates. We have Fuck Yeah and the Web IDE. Multi-contract support is now available. You can have multiple contracts inside of your projects. You can also now use the standard C++ header style contracts instead of only single file contracts, which is what was supported before. There's a couple different ways to go about this. There's some nice little helpers there in the contract, which you get as a template. The Web IDE just dropped today, a couple hours ago, also has new logins with Google and GitHub, so you can save all of the projects that you've been working on. You're no longer lost trying to find them or trying to bookmark them like a madman in 1997. For RAM, we have some new actions which are already available on Jungle and will be coming to mainnet very soon. These are some things that probably should have been done a while ago. Very glad that they're done now. We have the ability to transfer without suffering any kind of fees. You can now have a direct burn action which you can compose on top of. You can buy for yourself, which alleviates some problems that we've had with trying to set up keys, session keys, to be able to sign on web applications without having to go to wallets every time. And you have some composable inline logs, which help you to make other contracts on top of RAM using the deltas of the output. So let's say you buy RAM with EOS, you now have a way to also listen for an action that has the amount of RAM that was actually bought for the EOS, and also the same for selling. So you can actually have that data. It's a big hassle that we've suffered through for years, and I'm really happy to see that it's no longer a problem. You can test all of the new actions out at ramutils, that's ramutils.netlify.app. This is just a temporary application, so we can test this stuff out on the Jungle testnet. The Antelope Firewall. So the Boy team have been working on this for a while. It aims to help alleviate spam on the network and add a gate in front of nodes, which provides a rate limiter, firewall, and a load balancer aimed specifically at Leap nodes. So this isn't like putting an Nginx reverse proxy on this or a proxy or something like that. This is a specifically tailored software which is meant only for Leap. I was actually one of the reviewers on this for the grant, and I had the chance to play around with it. It's very cool. I can immediately see how it's useful and will be used by node operators. This, I guess, isn't only for BPs. I'm talking about node operators in general. Let's see, CPU, memory, and disk performance. There was a great article written by Ross from EOSphere who talked about the improvements in Leap 5.0. There's some real-life data taken from their own nodes. It's a really good read and a good way to get a view into just a tiny part of what it takes to run a BP. So even if you're not a developer, though it is a little technically dense, it is a really good way for you to understand some of the larger picture of what block producers have to go through. Now, last episode, I put forth a decently sized developer challenge, and luckily for you viewers today, it hasn't been completed yet. So let's see what the challenges are again and what you can do to earn up to 1,000 EOS.
It is time again for developer challenges. On the last episode, you had an opportunity to build a 2Don't app or a Tamagotchi dApp for 200 EOS each, one for EOS Native and one for EOS EVM. We got a ton of submissions, but only the two that did it properly first actually won the prizes. Today, I have another set of challenges, a little bit of a higher prize pool this time. Number 1, History Node Guide. We have a new guide to set up a Node.EOS API, and we have guides for the various configuration options like peering and plugins. What we don't have is a guide for apps that need a history solution of their own. There are public history solutions available, but if you need your own, it's a hard journey right now. To solve that problem, I'm offering up 1,000 EOS to whoever creates the best history guide by the next episode. That's right, this isn't first come, first serve. Take your time and do your best work. Your guide will also live inside of the official EOS documentation with your name as the author and a link to your GitHub. Number 2, build a Seeds app. A small group of us blockchain mad scientists have been toying around with this concept of seeds. It's an innovative way to load up arbitrary data onto the blockchain that can be used as a source for other types of applications, like games. One of the biggest problems we usually face is that the price of putting that kind of data on the blockchain is expensive, and then completely wasted when one of those games either gets abandoned or is just over. This system helps alleviate those core problems while also adding additional functionality like the transfer of ownership of those assets and API-like composability. The technology is still in beta and desperately needs some testing. So to kickstart the ecosystem, I'm offering up 200 EOS to 3 developers who are willing to create projects on top of Seeds and provide quality feedback. Follow the first link on the screen to join the Seeds Telegram chat, and the second link on the screen to join the Antelope developers chat if you want to reach out about the history guide. Until next time, happy building.
James, for bringing that great energy to the show and to everything else that Nathan James does. All right, our next segment, we've got Big Beard Banter, round number 2. I'd like to welcome back Zach and Yves to the show. And then this will be our last segment of the show. So I'm going to leave you at it, guys. Continue the discussion that you started last time, and I'll be back to sign everyone off whenever you guys are done. Who knows how long that'll be.
So Denis gave all of the meat of the topic. The only update we need to give is that video was recorded probably a week ago, and since then the RAM upgrades with the transferability and everything he talked about. It has been deployed to Jungle. It's been live on Jungle for at least a week now, and I believe the plan is within the next week that we will be finalizing the code, saying this is the final release. And from that point, it's just up to the BPs to throw up an MSIG. I'm sure Denis will probably be the one to do it. And then it'll just be a matter of how long it takes for the 15 BPs to sign off on it. So coming very, very soon. Anything else to add on RAM before we get into your tweets?
No, I think you got it. Although I missed the first part because I don't know if it was just me not hearing or your mic wasn't on. But everything I caught was good.
All right, so let's get into it. Liam, cue up the tweets. Let's pull them up on screen. So you put some ideas out there. Some are calling them a proposal. I guess we need to clarify like what this is. Like I think it's like innovating out in the open and for rapid feedback. I don't have a word for it because it's kind of like you're proposing something, but it's not like formalized proposal. This is happening. This is going on chain, guys. This is like, here's some innovative ideas. Let's try something different. We've been doing things a certain way for a long time now. Let's do something more drastic, or let's at least consider something more drastic. If this would have gotten shit on, then that's the end of it. Put it in your back pocket and say, all right, let's move forward. But these tweets actually move the market.
Just as a heads up, I'm probably going to be disconnecting again. It seems like there's a RAM leak with StreamYard and perhaps the current version of Chrome. And so I'm seeing the amount of RAM being used by my computer going up 100 megs every couple of seconds now, and I'm going to hit the limit where I just have no more RAM. Chrome shuts off and I restart. So just heads up, that's going to happen. You'll have to pick it up again. But yeah, this idea of like innovating out in the open or just ideating out in the open, I don't know how else to call it either. And so maybe let's talk about how that came about, what that means. It's not a proposal in its current state. It's a topic, it's an idea that will then be brought up to the BPs tonight. Obviously, people are talking about this in the community. You have to start somewhere, right? Kind of plant the seed and see where it goes. Now, whether it's in that current format, whether parameters will change, whether this is completely rejected and there's nothing there, whether or not we're onto something, and because it's the flame is growing and we keep the more we throw fuel on it, it keeps growing. We don't know yet, but this is what this started. You are right that when I did post that, almost on the minute, it was a direct correlation. EOS went up by 14% immediately, and there were people that sent in some that had so some obviously quite positive comments about that, and people have quite negative comments about that as well. But one thing you can't escape is that the market did react to it instantly.
It was uncoordinated. You and I had talked about it.
We were in a Zoom call together while talking about this. Yes, yeah, and basically just we're looking at what are the issues with EOS? What are the what do we have at our disposal? Like, what have we been doing? What works? What doesn't work? What does the market appreciate? What, regardless of whether we believe it's logical or not, what seems to gather traction? And it's a balance, right? You can have the greatest tech, but if the market doesn't know about it and the market doesn't care, which is kind of the current state of EOS. I mean, we just dropped out of the first page of CoinGecko. We're now ranked under 100. I don't know if that's still accurate, but we were right before we started recording this. And so there's a balance between kind of those economic parameters at the base level that we saw that we also impacted, going back to RAM, this idea of stopping the outflow output of RAM. That changed the economics of RAM considerably. We saw a tremendous shift in narrative built around that. And so just kind of this idea of, okay, what other parameters could we play around with? Most people don't know, but EOS does have a cap, and it's 10 billion. I forget how many years it will take till we get to 10 billion at this current rate, but it's hundreds of years. I forget how long, but it's very, very long. Even just to get to this idea of 2 billion is around 10 years, give or take a little bit more than 10 years, actually, to even get there. And so even though those things are far in the future, the market typically prefers.
Oh, there's his RAM leak. He'll be back in a second. But yeah, what he was saying is the market prefers knowing like what the cap is. So whenever you look on like CoinMarketCap, you'll see what percentage of the supply is circulating. And there's some projects only like 10% of their supply is circulating. So that means in the token holder's mind and the VC's mind, they see, oh shoot, like they're only at a 1 billion or so token supply, but the cap's 10 billion. That means 90% of the supply is going to enter the circulation. That's a risky bet, even though like there's a lot of information that's not in the little picture, the little bar chart that says it would take hundreds of years to do this. So it's really a perception thing, as simple as it is, of a bar chart that shows a 10% of the supply that's circulating right now of a maximum supply.
Mm-hmm. These are just ideas, right? And I guess it's interesting from my point of view. So try to put yourself in my shoes. If I don't say anything, then people complain because you don't say anything. If I say something, but prior to that being made public, I talk about with certain people, whatever, because they have a particular skill set or a particular affinity for a particular topic or something like that, then it's no good because some people knew the information beforehand. I got flack for example, the BTC L2 white paper. But how can people have an opinion on something if there's nothing to have an opinion on? So then you go to the other side of things where, all right, now I'm just going to release an idea and see what happens. But then everybody's got access to the same information at the same time. And it's not a proposal. It's just kind of putting a brain fart out there and seeing what could happen. And then there are issues with that too. So from my point of view, it's really interesting. I can't really say anything, but I can't also not say anything. And so we're trying different ways, and we're exploring different ideas. I think it's really important to remember these are just ideas. Some of them you might not like, and that's okay. Some of them might go against other ideas that we talked about. That's also okay. What we're doing here, though, is just throwing more ideas out there and seeing what can potentially have an impact. We're never going to get something, or I think it's very unlikely that we're going to get anything or everything that has 100% approval of every single person agrees with everything. It's not going to happen. So you're always going to have some people disagree, some people agree. We typically move on things that have enough agreement that the disagreement doesn't by far outweigh the agreement. And now we're entering territories of different things. If we go back to the business source license that I'm following along in the East chat, the discussion there, we're talking about this with the minting of tokens and stopping the inflation. Those are ideas that are more on the fringe or more polarizing in terms of ideas. And this is relatively new in terms of me within my voice or within the ENF, or people feeding in information and then it being relayed outwards and out there. We're now looking at completely different ideas of doing things because what we've been doing has not been working. There are certain parts that work. There are certain really good things about that, but there are also huge blind spots that we are aware of. There's huge gaps that we're aware of, and we're trying to fill in those gaps. And what I guess was really surprising about this was that there's a bunch of reasons as to why those parameters were chosen, or in that tweet, what led to that kind of idea. Where that comes from and what kind of prompted that and everything. But it's the first time, arguably, that we just say, okay, what if before there's a polished idea? And what was surprising that I did not expect is the market was paying attention. This is literally like a minute after it was posted that EOS pumped. And to move EOS is actually very, very difficult because the token supply is entirely liquid. And like all the tokens are already out there. So in order to move EOS of that magnitude within that short period of time is quite significant. And that I did not expect. So it does give kind of hope that we can still affect change. It is possible. We just don't know with what yet. And that's why we're throwing out different ideas. Now, if you don't like the throwing out ideas, that's cool. If you don't like the idea, that's cool. If you want us to go back to not throwing ideas, that seems like it's not necessarily a winning strategy either. There's no magic guidebook on what to do with this.
So what I liked I didn't see, like, one of the things with EOS is we've got a 3% inflation to fund everything. It has to fund validators. 1% goes to the BPs. It needs to fund the software development and the engineering to continue this. And that's a cost. It needs to fund marketing. And then it needs to have extra to fund community initiatives. And then you're competing against these other projects, and we call ours inflation, they call theirs a vesting schedule or whatever. And this is something that's always bothered me, is if you look at initial token distributions of almost every project, you'll see out of the 100% supply, you'll see like 30% going to the team, 30% going to a community fund, 20% going into staking rewards. And then if you actually monitored the wallets that have all of these distributions, it's like 20% equivalent. It's tokens from accounts that aren't being counted as circulating supply going into the circulating supply. It is literally the equivalent of inflation. It's just done a different way. And if you compare EOS and the amount
but the market prefers one over the other by far. Yes,
100%.
Yeah,
and that's been proven, and that's kind of what this is playing off of.
I'm not sure it's been proven, but there's correlation that the market prefers that in its state, and over the last couple of years, yes.
Because you see what the end game is. You know what the maximum supply is. Like how long it takes to get there might be questionable. I mean, sometimes there's programmatic cliffs.
Even though the time makes no sense too. This is the thing. Like we look at this 2 billion thing as a concrete example. It'll take more than 10 years to get to that, but the market prefers that. You don't even know what's going to happen next year, let alone in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Come on, nobody knows in this space what's going to happen there. But it sees that as less volatile than minting them today. It's kind of funny, but the market has spoken in general that it prefers that. It prefers that kind of tokenomic.
So one of the components of the tweets was different buckets. So there could be different buckets, and then the percentages could change. But you just threw something out there, and like I didn't see a lot of people discussing it. But there's a community bucket. Like, wouldn't that be great? Like, there's a lot of conversation of like grants, Pomelo, more community initiatives. What if there's a bucket just for that? And then you also brought up a new idea, which we had discussed privately a number of times, but you threw it out there publicly. Is right now there's ENF. There's EOS Labs, there's the ENV, and then you threw out, what if there was another team funded by the network that just focused on UX and product? You want to go into like a rough vision of that? And like, once again, it's very conceptual, but what's the general idea behind that?
Well, I've been talking about this idea for a while. ENF currently gets, or it still currently gets, I guess, 100% of that inflation, takes that 100% and gives 25% of that to EOS Labs. And I've been talking about for a while of what that next entity would be. Like, what other functions would we start splitting off and fund so that it's completely decentralized on its own, operating on its own, end to end, basically has authority over its own. And the idea with Labs is kind of a proof of concept of that. And the idea would be at some point, Labs goes to the BPs and submits an MSIG. Instead of it flowing through the ENF, it just goes to Labs directly. And then they're just accountable directly. Right now, Labs is kind of accountable to the BPs directly, but also to the ENF because the ENF does forward the funds along. But what if we replicated that with more entities? So we've been talking about this for a very long time. We've got ideas in mind of what that could be. And I guess with this, I'm kind of giving a further hint of that. It would be something along the lines where if the ENF is kind of the back-end protocol development, more arm, as well as then the face of the network, marketing, communications, more kind of that side. Labs is more of the application layer, maybe more business development, ecosystem growth type of thing. One thing that we know we've got huge gaps on are UX, this idea of having a better user experience on EOS. That requires tremendous amount of funding. And so with this idea of token, essentially new token minting and having a significant amount of tokens up front loading, the next 10 years worth of tokens, but front loading them within a shorter period of time, you could now direct a lot of that towards a new entity that would be focused on this UX component, so that it's entirely funded and entirely independent, where it just does that. That's what it's funded for. That's what its mandate is. That's what they are accountable to the BPs and to the token holders for. So that's that's that idea. And one thing we talked about, and I kind of just mentioned, but you were hinting at as well, is a lot of what we've had to do has been accumulated because we get a slow drip of inflation. We're unable to do things where it requires tokens. We just need the tokens, not for the fiat valuation of the token, just the token. You just need tokens, and you did a lot of them. one of the things market makers, for example, they typically want a certain percentage of the token supply in order to be effective at that function. EOS doesn't have that luxury. So even just to be able to enter into a partnership with DWF, what we did last year, we had to basically penny pinch for a year and a half to save tokens on the side to have enough to be able to start doing something with that. We've had exchanges reaching out, and they've wanted to do staking programs within their exchange for the EOS token. That just requires a lot of tokens. A lot of it is even just token loans. And sometimes you just need the token, not for its value, but for the amount of tokens you have and the percentages that represents in terms of overall token supply. And we've not been able to do those things in EOS, whereas our competitors have a clear advantage for that. There's TVL advantages in there. Like, there's a bunch of different reasons why, kind of came up with this idea to throw out and start discussing.
So you brought up staking in some form here. So as part of one of your bullet points, I'll read it verbatim: release newly minted tokens over a period of time with aggressive release in the beginning, tapering over time on a logarithmic curve. And that ties into staking and staking rewards. And if we wanted like an exchange like Upbit to create like a staking program to get over 200 million tokens, it would cost you could give all 3% of the inflation to a staking reward program, and it wouldn't. I mean, that might be enough. 3% is a lot, but there's not 3% available. Let's say you give 0.2%, because that's really, like, when you're dealing with a 2%, you don't have a lot. We don't have staking rewards on EOS. We never have been able to. The Rex pool has only very recently hit 2%, and there's only 2% APR in Rex right now because there's only 50 million tokens in there. If you actually put a lot of tokens in the Rex, if you imagine a time if there's 250 million tokens in Rex, that APR would once again be 0.02%. So if you wanted to offer a competitive staking reward comparable to other chains, they're not doing it through an inflation. They're doing it because their token distribution schedule has 20-30% of the supply dedicated towards
created for that
staking rewards.
Yeah.
So this is recreating that and making it possible. So I guess I led into it, but like, what is the general idea here with doing the aggressive release to kind of redistribute the chips?
I mean, there's a bunch of reasons why. I can't see you, Zach. I don't know if you're still here. I'm assuming you guys can still see me or hear me. All right, okay. So obviously having those tokens accessible earlier rather than later, like I just said, being able to have tokens, obviously now you're moving into a different territory, though. With the current inflation mechanism, the runway is essentially unlimited. The value of that runway changes over time, and so you're managing your finances completely differently than moving into a model where you now have a treasury and you now need to manage that treasury, and that treasury, once it runs out, that's it, it's done. And so it's a completely different underlying economic foundation, and so obviously there would be a lot of changes in how these entities would need to operate alongside that fact. But then it opens up a lot of new opportunities. You mentioned that, staking on exchanges is one of them. But this idea of having tokens early opens a lot of doors. And then again, I put up very basic parameters of what that could look like. But we were talking earlier, what if some of the tokens are actually locked for a longer period of time? Some of the tokens are actually released earlier. What if some of the tokens are released in a cliff? What if, and we were even talking about this as well, and this is what's great about this. And like, now people are asking questions of, so how would you actually do this? And some people were bringing up ideas about, well, what if you actually created a new chain? What if there's a token swap and this is a new token?
Oh, Yves dropped again. Man, is another ram leak, and my dog's barking in the background. I'm just gonna mumble until he gets back. But yeah, so basically it started up a lot of conversations.
Doing it while I'm like mid.
This might be the last time, but yeah, so a lot of...
So it's basically just sparking conversation. It's sparking ideas. People are now playing around with that idea in their mind, like, what would that look like? And at some point, maybe it will be this is a stupid idea and it's never going to go anywhere. That's okay. But right now it is generating a like, okay, well, what if, okay, if you push that further, How would you do this? Okay, if you actually went that route, so we're talking about a new chain when I got cut off. What if this was a token swap and there's a new token? What if that's an opportunity for rebranding? Because we talked in the past many times about rebranding EOS, new token ticker, extremely difficult for exchange listings. Like, what if all of that kind of started playing well together? This idea of BTCL2, what if that was kind of part of that as well? There's a bunch of different things now. We're just throwing ideas on the table to see what if, but at core economic principles of the chain that we've really not touched in years at all. And so there's a recognition that is perhaps one of the contributing factors as to why we find ourselves where we are today. It doesn't mean that everything we talk about is going to get implemented. First of all, the ENF has zero power over that. Any change on chain requires block producers. Is the ENF in a position differently than other people where if we bring up a topic, it gathers more attention? For sure. Let's not hide it. That is one of the functions of the ENF. Like, that is part of the idea. And the ENF is a filter for when we hear things in the community. So a lot of these ideas also come from just reading everything and like, oh, this thing and this thing and this thing. And actually, oh, if she put this together, like, what about this type of thing? We've had those discussions forever. This kind of discussion we're having right now that led to that tweet, for example, that's been happening forever. The difference here is now we're starting to, or at least last week, we did like, all right, let's just put this public and let's just see what happens. That is new. That is something that is very different in terms of the operations of.
It's stirred up conversations internally too. You putting out the public tweets. We had a all hands team call today with the ENF and hearing the engineers' opinions on it of like, what could we do if we did a token swap? Because we've talked about rebranding EOS, just the branding, but not the name, because there's limitations of being able to change the ticker with exchange listings and also with the protocol itself, because there's system contract where it's hard coded in, there's smart contracts, there's a lot of issues. What if you did a token swap to launch a new chain? Polygon's doing the exact same thing right now with Polygon 2.0. They're doing a token swap from the Matic token to the Poly token. It's over a 1 year period and they're doing the swap. What if the token swap was an ERC20 token? What if the 2 billion tokens were locked because it's an immutable contract on Ethereum?
Yeah.
And what if the wrapped version of the token was the native token on the chain? So the wrap, and this is exactly how Polygon works today. The Matic token, the source of truth token contract, is an ERC20. The staking for validators happens on Ethereum. All of the utility of the token happens on the Polygon network. Like, what if we took a similar approach and really embraced Ethereum, embraced ERC20 standard, embraced the exchange
not for the technology, because I know some people are going to start complaining about the technology, but it does have advantages for certain things. And what if EOS could leverage kind of those little tidbits, this for this, this for this, this for this? I mean, we are increasingly more across kind of like cross-chain or inter-blockchain world anyways. What if we start leveraging all of those, but within, let's say, EOS 2.0 or whatever that be called, like this new thing, EOS Classic or whatever, this new name, this would be EOS Classic currently, and then there'd be whatever this new thing is. Something like that. Yeah.
So I think it's like, what we could think of this is, last week was just a catalyst. There's the conversation starter. Since last week, there's been conversations internally with the ENF. There's been an incredible amount of conversations in the Telegram groups. They're going to continue
have reached out.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're going to continue to ideate. Like, if you have feedback, throw it out there. We'll formalize
good or
feedback.
bad. It's okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and eventually we're going to keep ironing out these ideas, ironing them out. Then eventually they will turn into a proposal. But right now it's just kind of ideating in the public, throwing shit at a wall and seeing what sticks. And this stuck. I mean, there's something to this. The market reacted. And we're going to continue talking about it. And we're going to continue talking about it in EOS Elites, in the EOS Global chat publicly. Ideally, we do it in the EOS Global chat because that's the chat that everyone has access to. We're going to be creating a new topic in that group specific to the proposals. We'll create another one for the BTCL2 feedback, but there'll be another mechanism for the white paper feedback. most likely on GitHub. I'm not sure what the mechanism is yet.
Maybe another channel there.
Yeah.
Again, it depends. So obviously the conversation goes where the conversation is fruitful, and where we mentioned this on, I think it was the last show that we did. We were talking about elites a lot, and it's been the area where people criticize, sure, and that people are not happy. That's everywhere. But that there's also ideas being thrown out, and that those ideas get explored, and that there are ideas being thrown out. And that's been, from my point of view, one of the only places where that's been occurring consistently. It would be great that occurs as well in the regular global chat, where it's not just negative, and negative is fine. That's okay. There's tons of work that we need to do, and there's a lot of things that are not working out. We clearly recognize that. We hear you. We know that we ourselves are trying to come up with solutions to the very real problems that we see. We are not oblivious to them. What's different with elites, and what hopefully would be nice with these other more accessible chats to everybody, regardless of how much EOS you have, that people follow the same kind of idea of, let's just throw ideas and let's just talk about ideas, not just always bitch about whatever, which also occurs in elites. Like, there's a lot of bitching in elites too. But yeah, on these subjects, we'll create new topics in those channels, and we'll see what people talk about. Tonight, we're going to talk with the BPs, see what they think, see if if they have any opinions on this. Maybe we get in there, and out of the 30 or so BPs that join, 25 of them are like, this is a garbage idea. Stop wasting your time on this. Focus elsewhere. Great. Now okay. Or actually, you're onto something. In the next month, work on this, and then come back with a little bit more meat on the bone of that idea. So we'll see. That is what we can do. But we are trying different ways, trying different things to try to get EOS out of where it currently is right now. And some of it you will not like. Some of it will not be implemented. Some of it are bad ideas. But if the idea is we shouldn't throw ideas out there because they might be bad, I do not personally support that. I don't think it's a good way to proceed. You don't know if it's a bad idea, and you might say, well, it's a bad idea before you propose it. Not necessarily. If it was that bad and it was 100% bad, I think you're right. But everything we've thrown at the wall so far, there are some people that agree and some people that disagree. And this is where perhaps we're onto something, when it's not all just vanilla and nobody cares, basically.
Yep, and one of the things is, so we've been doing these monthly live streams, and I've seen feedback of, why don't you do the Fireside Chats that we're doing in Discord? We're still doing weekly. We call them the EOS Community Lounge. We're doing them every single week at 3 p.m. Eastern, same time as the old Fireside Chats, but it's in the EOS Global Telegram chat. Liam and Brandon from the ENF have been leading it. Aaron from Greymass has been showing up. Everyone, Monkey, there's a lot of people showing up. Next week, I'm sure, because of the hot topics of the BTC L2 and these token economics, I will be on that. Yves, could we put you on the spot here? Will you be at the lounge next week?
I don't know. I usually have other things I can see. I've joined a few times. I've been quite silent. A few times I joined, there was nobody there.
I've done the same.
Yeah.
There's usually not a set agenda going in, but I think if you can't make it next week, maybe we could plan one that you could attend, and we'll plan it in advance and say we're going to talk about the new economics of ideas, BTCL2 if people have questions, and we'll do a voice chat with the community, and we'll do like old Fireside Chat style.
Yeah.
It's been a while. It's been a while since we've done that. You're about to drop again. And it's just me. Someone else pop in here. Steph, save me. Yeah.
Hey, what's up, Zach?
Maybe we can start taking it home, because I was running.
Yeah, that was great. That was a great talk. Good segment. Big Beard Unleashed or Big Beard Disconnected. Not sure which one we'll go with. But no, that was good.
RAM on EOS is so hot, it's burning my computer.
Yeah, so the other thing, we said it a few times, but just to reiterate, so all of these ideas that have been discussed, from the supply, RAM, not so much RAM, but we've got a BP call tonight. Every month we do a block producer call. We bring in live translations for Chinese and English. We bring everyone together. Tonight's going to be the first, we're talking about things on this live stream and on those tweets that haven't even been presented to the block producers yet. So that's how fresh all of this stuff is. The blog producers might say these are all terrible ideas, we're going to shut it down. They might say, hey, we think you're onto something, we want you to continue, and then come back next month and with more concrete ideas, then more concrete the next month, and more concrete the next month, and eventually we can invoke some real change. So hopefully the next time we talk to you on this live stream, we'll have a lot of updates. I mean, in the meantime too, but I'm looking forward to it. It's been a long day, a lot of calls, and then going right into this live stream. Then I got about a 1 hour break, and then we'll be we got 2 hours set aside for the BP call because they're gonna have a lot of questions too. There's a lot going on in EOS. That's a good problem.
I don't know how that timing on that BB call gets determined. It would be great if we could have it right before this monthly show so we can talk about the topics, because I'm very curious to know what's going to be discussed, etc. And now,
the topic list was literally the same notes we had for this call.
This is
like
BTC that happens.
Yeah.
So there's no specific cadence.
Okay.
And the main,
but it's about once per month for this show, and it's about once per month for the BP call.
And if you want to see behind the curtain, like sometimes it's not really monthly; it's like every 5 weeks. There's not always something to talk about.
It was every 3 weeks too. Yeah, depends on the holidays. But it's typically a Wednesday, same as this live stream. So both of them occur on Wednesdays Eastern, anyways, because it's Thursday out in Asia, and that's really the only guideline. And it's roughly once per week, sometimes 3 weeks, sometimes 5 weeks, depending on holidays or topics. Sometimes there's just not enough, and so we delay it by 1 week. Sometimes there's too much, so we accelerate it by 1 week.
And then the BTCL2, and that one came up. Tony proposed an idea in the WeChat group.
Yeah, that started
the
there.
BP call is like we rushed it and got it the next. We planned it all in a week.
We actually did an ad hoc BP call for that. Yeah.
Yeah, and usually they're 1 hour, but and they're only on the calendar for 1 hour. But we have the translators for
today. We have a 2 hour plan because there's a lot to discuss. And yeah, we typically get about 30 or so. In terms of people, between 30 and 40, but BP is being represented between 20 and 25, I think is the average. The invitation is out to all top 30 BPs. And so obviously the rankings change, and so the update and the invitations change alongside that, but it's very well attended generally. And you get people from all over, and interpreters are there. And so we now have this simultaneous interpretation going on now for the last year. I think we're coming on the year mark. And so it shortens the meetings by half instead of having to de-double everything, but it also makes it that everybody can talk, and we can have conversations in real time while there's basically somebody else speaking in your ear in the other language. It's pretty cool.
I always think it's funny whenever someone's speaking Chinese and then I hear someone with a British accent in my ear. they always have British accents for some reason.
Well, because a lot of the interpreters have learned English by watching the BBC. When we interview them, that's one of the things. Yeah.
And we always put out a text recap, so there's always a blog post the following week. But we do encourage all of the blog producers, they can go back immediately into the public chat and start talking about what we talked about. Like there's consensus that people don't want to be recorded when they speak. There's a identity, like there's different laws in different parts of the world. People don't want to be public. We don't want people to be afraid to speak up because they think they're going to be recorded. But whenever we put the notes out, nothing's being censored. Like anyone else could put out notes. If you're a BP and you want to put out your own recap, you could. We do it. It usually takes us a little bit of time because we want to be thorough, and then we run it by all of the stakeholders who spoke to make sure that we articulated what they said. Because like my team on the ENF, like Brandon, he's listening to the Chinese translator, so he needs to speak with the actual Chinese speakers in Telegram and make sure that like his notes actually line up with what they actually said. So there's a lot that goes into these BP calls, but that's kind of next on the agenda after a long day of nonstop meetings talking about the same stuff.
All right. Well, on that note, I'm going to let you guys go.
Yeah.
Take a small break before another long 2 hour call. Looks like we're just under 2 hours for this show. Well done, guys. And yeah, excited to hang out with you guys in 1 month and do it all over again.
All right.
All right, so we're going to wrap it up here. Final reminder, if you enjoy the show, leave a like, leave a subscribe. If you want to continue the conversation, join us on Telegram, t.me/EOS_global. And then on that same Telegram channel every 3 p.m. Eastern on Wednesdays, same time as the old Fireside Chat, 1 hour before this show on the last Wednesdays of the month. Join up on Telegram, where everyone in the community can join on stage and speak their minds, ask their questions, etc. So that's great fun. And then, of course, follow the ENF on X and on all the other socials that have been linked down here throughout the show. And yeah, thank you for Yves and Zach for being great guests. Shout out to Brendan and Liam behind the scenes for helping produce a great show. And, well, until next week, let's go EOS!